Welcome to the Doctor Sustainability Podcast. So today's guest is Stephanie Boyce. Stephanie is former president for the Law Society for England and Wales. She's an advocate for equity, diversity and inclusion and justice. She's also known for her work around the area as a thought leader. She has made British history, becoming the president of the Law Society, the first person of colour to take the seat, and also the sixth woman to take that seat in British history. Thank you for coming on this show. So in terms of I was very much taken back in terms of your journey and how you become the president. That made me reach out to yourselves in terms of your journey, how you become president, and your role in terms of equity, diversity, inclusion and justice, not just for your work, but you as an individual as well. So it'd be nice to sort of take a step back, learn who you are, your early life, your career, the profession, and overall what makes Stephanie to do what you're doing today. If we take a step back from all the headlines and what we've heard so far in the news and also what people talk about in terms of making British history, where did it all start in terms of your early life?
Where did it all start? Well, it started in the Caribbean, on the island of St. Vincent, when my grandfather took the decision, aged 39, to come to the United Kingdom. And of course, I say, and they say, in search of faith, hope and greater opportunities, but in terms of upward mobility as well, wanting to make a better life. And he was subsequently followed by my grandmother and my aunts and uncles. And my mother would come in 1967 from St. Vincent, and my father would come in 1964 from Barbados, and their worlds would collide in Aylesbury. And so for me, in terms of growing up with a strong sense of justice and watching, because obviously the family was very much steeped in the Caribbean, but they were very much steeped in and trying to immerse themselves in British culture and what it meant, the opportunities that could be provided here. And so we would watch what was going on as growing up. We'd watch what was going on the news and so forth, and looking at what was going on globally, not just domestically, but that desire, that wanting to make a difference, to enable other voices to be heard, including mine. And I was absolutely fascinated by the news, fascinated by Margaret Thatcher, the way she spoke, the way she presented herself. She was a barrister, and she subsequently became our first female Prime Minister. All of those things, a young child growing up in rural Buckinghamshire, dreaming big. And it was just those pivots of moments in time that I saw that I wanted to make a contribution to.
With Margaret Thatcher, is it just what she achieved that appealed, or was there more to her?
I think, first of all, let me qualify. What Margaret Thatcher went on to do, I in no way support and absolutely condone it. But in terms of what she achieved, coming from the background that she came from, her father was a grocer, and so forth, and being a female at that time, to become our Prime Minister at that time in cabinet, where she was surrounded by all of those men, and on the world stage as well. Let us not forget, there wasn't many female leaders, and in fact today there remains not many female leaders. But what she achieved and what she went on to do and how she held her own. And for me, dreaming big, because when I was growing up in the 70s, there wasn't that many women of colour, people of colour on British TV. Yeah. And so she was somebody, a strong character, a strong female character that I saw and felt that I could learn from.
Wonderful. Growing up in rural Buckinghamshire, as you went for the schooling system, what experiences did you have? Was there anything that appealed at that point for you to go into law?
Looking back, when I look at my middle school, and at my middle school in Aylesbury, we didn't wear a uniform, which was, compared to other schools in the local area that did wear uniforms. And I felt there was an injustice there, because if you put us in uniforms, we're all the same. Yeah. And the inequality kind of lessens. So I was campaigning to get school uniform introduced into our school.
So you started early.
I started early. and that, of course, is one of the things that I talk about, is that one starts early. and I started to hone my voice. I wasn't successful with that campaign, but the point is that for me, it was around the messaging, it was around the impact. It got people thinking. And of course, that school now has a uniform. And what we've seen actually in other countries that didn't necessarily have uniforms, they've picked up on the fact that if you put people in uniforms, students in uniform, that actually it aids their behaviour, it aids their learning, and it narrows that gap. And the other thing, of course, is we're still in uniform, even when you go into the workplace. I know COVID, the pandemic, has somewhat lessened that. But, certainly as lawyers, when we go into courtrooms, I'm not strictly in black today, but, I do like to wear a bit of black. But we are still in uniform. It makes up who we are.
Yeah. I think with that also, there's a manifestation in terms of inequality if the people are not in uniform, in terms of wealth that could be shown in clothing.
Yes.
And really, when you're in formal settings, do we really need that? So it's great to hear in terms of how that manifests of your early life. When we start looking at your career, you didn't take the conventional route into law. So let's say you took a slightly scenic route early on.
Yes.
So why did you not go straight into law?
Well, a factor of many things.
Yeah.
Age 12, we emigrated to the United States of America.
Yeah.
So I left high school at 19 there. I was slightly put back a year. They thought I had a speech impediment. So I was put back. As soon as I graduated from high school in America, I came back to this country within days because this is the jurisdiction that I wanted to qualify in. But I got back here, and of course my American qualification, my high school diploma, wasn't recognised here. So I then had to do a series of courses and qualifications to enable me to get to university. And I started off part-time at university in 1996. I would in February 1996, I would then go on to study full-time in September 1996. So for me, it was 2 years trying to get that exchange to now enable me to go into university, and then along the way. So I think I was about 30 by the time I qualified as a solicitor.
What appealed to you to go into law?
What appealed to me to go into the law? I think then it was, as I say, wanting to enable people's voices to be heard. America was a turning point for me. I was struck by so many things, including the poverty, including people's inability to exercise their rights. I'm a firm believer that legal rights mean absolutely nothing if you don't know what those rights are and you don't even know when those rights are being taken away. And far too often that is the case, whether that's America, whether it's here domestically. Globally, we are seeing so much of that. But America would be a turning point because I was touched by people's inability because of, as I say, their low socioeconomic position, because of the colour of their skin, to exercise their rights, to know what their rights are. And that absolutely is what drove me, continues to drive me to this day.
How did you feel when you saw people not knowing their rights or having their rights breached and not knowing about it?
I'll give you a real-time example. Yesterday, Sunday trading laws. Yesterday, I'm in the supermarket having exercised my parental responsibilities, my acquired parental responsibilities, acting as chauffeur to my teenager nephew. Dropped him off, thought I'd stop off on the way back to get some dessert. Got into my preferred supermarket, stood in the queue thinking, why is it all closed? Why are people just stood here? And then it dawned on me as to why. Sunday trading laws. That says, that you can only trade for a number of hours between, I think it's between 10 and 6. And some choose to trade between 10 and 4. Others choose to trade between 11 and 5. This particular shop was 11 till 5. But there were people behind me who were like, what's going on here? There's a power failure, what's going on? And I turned around because this lady was telling her child, power failure, whatever. And I turned around and I said, actually, it's Sunday trading laws. And she's like, what? That's ridiculous. This is, infringing on my rights and all of this. Of course, what we know Sunday trading laws was originally, or one of the reasons, was to get people to church.
Yes.
So not to impinge on people's ability to go to church. But of course, I then put a post out. Of course, the comments that have come back in terms of, how outdated, how ridiculous it is. But the point is that is a prime example of how the different laws still affect our day-to-day lives. And what struck me was how little people are aware of those laws. And that's just a snippet of some of our laws that are affecting our day-to-day life. But the law, of course, impinges upon every part of our lives. We cannot escape it.
As you're going through the education system to understand the law in terms of the formalities of the theory, the practice, how did you feel learning more about the law in that sense? Were you surprised at some of the subjects?
I was surprised, but I was hungry for it. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I realised that there is strength in learning. And it absolutely drove that desire to learn more. And as I say, I couldn't get enough of it. And wanting to impart that knowledge and impart that information. There are lots of parents out there that don't know, in fact, about the age of criminal responsibility in England. And it differs in Scotland and so forth. And in fact, there is a case, my mother spent most of yesterday talking about this particular case of a young man who's travelled abroad and is now imprisoned abroad. That's because, some of that is that we don't know, we either are not au fait with the laws of the United Kingdom, but if we are, we expect those same laws to follow us around the world. And of course, it doesn't. Within our own United Kingdom, our laws differ at times. So, it's about that awareness and education to know that the law matters. As I say, it touches every part of our lives. You cannot escape it, whether you are in the United Kingdom or whether you are in a different country. The law matters.
From what you're saying, it sounds like there are foundational concepts here, formations and things around you that you take for granted,
Absolutely.
But that govern you day to day, which might be in forms of rules, regulation or legislation in that aspect. So now taking a step back to your period transitioning and taking the role as president.
Gosh.
What were you thinking? When did you decide to put the hat in the race?
Well, so I was elected to council, or nominated to council in 2013, because at that time, the seat was nominated rather than elected. So I became a council member in 2013 for the Women Lawyers Division, as it was then. And along with 2 other council members for that division. And you were elected nominated for 4 years. And one of the things that struck me when I first went on to council was I was told, you sit there and you say nothing for 2 years. And I thought...
Oh, okay.
Exactly,
Why?
I thought that.
Well, given that you're a solicitor and you speak for many people and yourself...
Exactly. I thought, you want me to sit here for 2 years and say nothing? But I was told that was my apprenticeship, that was my learning time.
Okay.
But my pushback was, I'm here to represent my constituents. I possibly cannot sit here for 2 years and observe and say nothing. So I didn't listen to that piece of advice. Then there was this whole notion about the way that other people had got to become an office holder and how they were trying to impart that knowledge and information as to things that you had to say and do, or positions you had to hold. Well, I was never going to quite get to those positions because I was one of a very few members who came from an in-house background. It's changed on council now, but at that time, the majority of council members were from private practice.
Why is that, or why was that?
I think because, as I say, that, at that time, so we're talking, as I say, 2013, it was that in-house was starting to grow.
Oh, okay.
But I think because we hadn't spoken lots about in-house and alternative routes to being a solicitor in our profession, it was, as I say, private practice, this is how you do it, this is where you go. So as we started to open up more and talk more, and of course rules and regulations started to change as well, ABSs and so forth, alternative business structures and so forth. So that opened up lots of pathways and people could become more creative in terms of where they practice, what they practiced and so forth. So I didn't listen to that. So the first time I put my hat forward was in 2015 and was basically told, go and do your time, And then I kept putting as we know, I kept putting my hat forward. And in 2019, after 4 attempts, I was successfully elected.
Why did you persist?
Well, let me say, if I didn't, if after the fourth attempt I wasn't successful, I would have kept going a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. I would have kept going, if nothing else, just to irritate the hell out of everyone. I had people who told me, never in our lifetime will we see an ethnic minority become president. Wow. You will get frustrated with the workings of this building. And absolutely, of course I did get frustrated with the workings of the building. The Law Society is a huge beast. It needed a turnaround. But the point is that there were lots of people in that space who felt that they knew what a leader should look like and sound like. And for many, it wasn't me, because I'd come from I was in-house rather than private practice. I had somebody who said to me, we need someone who can converse with government, as if I couldn't converse with government. All of those things. That's why I spend lots of my time working towards dismantling that notion about who we see as a leader, people we put in positions of power and influence. Because what my leadership, my tenure has demonstrated is that actually you don't have to come from a particular background, have gone to a particular university, but you can still lead with influence and authority.
All in all, from hearing about your work and reading about your work over the years, I have to say you will be going down British history. You are in British history for what you have done. Not just that, just open the doors for others to follow as well. It takes someone very strong to do what you have done. In terms of some of the remarks that you've heard and comments that have been thrown at you, how did it make you feel? How did you continue to persist?
Absolutely. It made me even more determined. It made me...
The Margaret Thatcher you came out.
Margaret Thatcher, minus the handbag. But it absolutely made me more determined. The more they told me I couldn't, was the more that I was determined that I could.
Yeah.
And, that speaks volumes. And I hope, if nothing else, that is the message that will far outlast my time, is that, you keep going. Despite what people tell you, you run your own race, you write your own story, and, you adopt that mindset, that mindset that says, I can do it.
Okay. Now talking about where we are with the legal profession at the moment, there's obviously conversation about backlogs of cases in court, a lot of strain on the legal profession with solicitors' workloads.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? How can they manage the way they are? Because many people, though it might be sort of glamorized seeing all these programs, for example, the Suits, that they swing doors and go into courtrooms, from what I know from many friends and family that work in the profession, it's a lot of long, hard work, and many people don't do it for the money. They do it for justice, equality, for things to come out the right way in the UK, in England and Wales. So while they're faced with heavy workloads, backlogs in the courtrooms, what do they do?
Well, there is a perception problem around the way the public perceives lawyers. And too many times, they think of us as, fat cat lawyers. The press has responsibility in this area. Yeah. The way that they, the way that they portray lawyers. But they don't talk about the lawyers who are being called out of their beds at ridiculous times of night to go down to a cold police station to provide legal advice, legal representation for someone who perhaps has just been arrested, who perhaps is at the most vulnerable. And what, of course, we have called for is proper remuneration for that, because I don't know of any others that would get, called out of their bed at night for, at times, working. And it doesn't matter how many hours you work, you get a fixed cost, which I'm not going to quote it because I can't remember the exact figure at this particular point. But it's not enough. I've heard stories about it not being enough to cover the time that you've spent there and the advice that you've given. But also, you can go on to be a tradesperson in this country and not be as regulated as a lawyer and earn a heap load more money. But yet, as soon as you say to someone, I'm a lawyer, a solicitor, whatever, it's like everybody has an opinion on that. And what I want to do is I want to change that narrative, the way the public perceives of us as lawyers, because what we do is vital. What we do is important. We are the legal sector is an economic powerhouse.
Yeah.
We are the second largest, contributor in and profession in the world, second behind America. The largest in Europe, our legal services sector here in the UK. But yet that recognition that what we do provides value is often lost on the public. And I want to increase the way the public understands what we do and the value we bring to their lives and to society.
That's great to hear. So in terms of what's currently happening with backlogs in the courtrooms, and you're hearing some, or I'm hearing some fundamental flaws within the actual delays in court cases. And I think people may not realise when the court date has changed, you might think it's just administration sort of stepping in and moving dates, but this backs onto people, frameworks of relationships, families, and a lot of turmoil at times.
Absolutely.
So could you give us a bit more insight of what's happening right now and your views on the actual backlog with the courtrooms?
So I don't have the most up-to-date figures because it's my understanding, unless somebody tells me differently, that those figures for the last quarter, or probably the quarter before that now, have not been released.
Yeah.
The government have been reluctant to release those because they said there was something wrong with the data. So my ask is, please release them. But I think we're clear. We know that whatever it is, it's too many.
Yeah.
Last count, there was about 68,000 cases in the Crown Court backlogged, and around about 360-something thousand in the Magistrates' Court. And that's not counting the backlog in the civil courts.
Yeah.
There are children who are waiting over a year for the courts to decide which parent they're going to live with. There was recently a case where a young child who has SEND needs, special educational needs, has been removed from a school because the school can't meet their needs, who is at home, and his parents are taking them to the education tribunal, but yet that case is not scheduled to be heard until 2026. That child is out of school for a long time, missing out on education. There is a real problem. We know recently that Our Lady Chief Justice has asked for more funding for more court hours. I think she asked for 5,000, she got 500. So the point is that we have, and if you are a victim, a witness, or a defendant, and your life is on hold because you are awaiting your day in court, you're awaiting trial, that has a number of impacts, knock-on effects on your life, whether it's, because you're on bail or because your memory, trying to recall events and so forth. But the point is that the backlog was not because of the pandemic. It was exacerbated because of the pandemic. But this has been through successive governments' failure to invest properly in our justice system. They have not invested. They have cut. It's not a protected department, the Justice Department. It should be. We should think of the justice system as our fourth emergency service, like we do the NHS, and we should provide sufficient funding for it. It should not have taken this summer's rioting or the early release of prisoners due to overcrowded prisons to embed the state of our justice system in the public's conscience.
Why is it not regarded on the level that it should be regarded?
Well, I can tell you what politicians spent their time telling me. They spent their time telling me there are no votes in the justice system. Okay. The difficulty is we have lots of people who think there is no smoke without fire. Yeah. We have lots of people who, as I say, don't know about the laws. They don't think about the law until they come to it. And when you come to it at notably a point of trauma, because you've been arrested or you're a victim, or your children have been taken away, or you lost your job, whatever, that is too late to learn about your rights. And that's why I am a strong advocate for having law taught in schools. Our citizens being equipped with the tools necessary at the earliest possible stage to learn about the law.
Stephanie Boyce, I'm glad that you are here as an advocate in this area. So another part that I want to talk about is where you are today. Right now, you operate what we refer to as a portfolio career. So in terms of operating a portfolio, what does that mean for someone that's new to portfolio careers?
Gosh, what does it mean? So I had a portfolio career alongside full-time jobs and all of that. And I remember when I was building this dream, not knowing my destination, but just building that dream. And I was volunteering for everything. And a colleague said to me, what are you doing? You know, you're volunteering for all of these things and you're not getting paid for a single thing. But I absolutely believe in a life of service. I absolutely believe that there are greater rewards other than monetary. But what all of that allowed me to do was it allowed me to work with some of the greatest legal minds that this country had to offer. I got to sit next to them. I got to hear from them. But they got to sit next to me. They got to hear from me. And some of those relationships that I would build would follow me, has followed me throughout my career, that I would draw inspiration from, support from, information from, work from, and so forth.
Could I suggest that maybe as you were doing this, you were actually reverse mentoring these people?
Well, that's a possibility as well. Absolutely. Yeah. But, you know, and I continue to do that in terms of when I had my unveiling of my official portrait on last month, one of the partners who spoke, she spoke about the fact that, Stephanie, you have taught us that skills are not just drawn from the lawyer you work shadow, but that you can work in retail, you can work, you know, in a shoe shop, wherever, and that those skills are just as valuable as any other skill gained by work shadowing a lawyer. And that is the whole point, that diversity is found every and anywhere. Leaders are found every and anywhere, because this, whatever this was always there. But what the presidency allowed me was it gave me an amazing platform to amplify my voice and that of others.
Yeah. So in terms of your portfolio, what does it comprise of currently?
So it's a mix of advisory work. Yeah. It's a mix of, so do a bit of consultancy, going in and advising and thought leadership work, because I have a real thing about, whilst access to the legal profession has improved, we are not where we need to be in terms of how we are filling that succession pipeline, who we are putting in positions of leadership, senior positions. So lots of thought leadership, and I spend a lot of my time speaking, doing keynote speeches, and writing articles and doing the odd TV appearance.
I actually watched a recent one on where 100 Women in Law. Yes. That was absolutely powerful.
Yes, thank you.
So in terms of, are there any specific parts of your portfolio that you really thrive doing?
Oh, it's the public speaking.
Oh, okay.
It's the public speaking. Just getting that message out there and, you know, being a visible reminder of what is possible. And just, you know, and I get to meet people when I go out. I will spend a lot of time meeting people. I spend a lot of time doing things for free as well, in terms of you never know who's watching, but you never know whose life you might touch, you might change. And it's absolutely important, as I say, that when I started this journey, I wanted to be visible and I wanted to be accessible.
And you've definitely done that. I've got some more questions. So these questions are more quick-fire questions. Okay. We've got to know your formal setting, in terms of your upbringing, your portfolio, your career, why you went into law. I just want to know you as Stephanie now. Okay. So these questions are very short and snappy. To start off with, if you were talking to your younger self, what advice would you give?
If I was talking to my younger self, I'd tell my younger self never to give up. Anything's possible.
Yeah. Okay. If you were not working in law right now or around law, what would you be doing?
Gosh, my whole life has been steeped in law. I've never thought about anything different other than the time that I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be an air hostess.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very diverse.
I know. Gosh, if I wasn't working in the law, probably a politician.
Okay.
Not an elected one, though.
Okay, a politician. Maybe you could fix what's happening currently in the legal system in terms of the court backlog.
Wow, who knows? Give me a whole wad of money, I might.
Okay, so in terms of yourself, what would you like to be remembered for?
I'd like to be remembered for somebody who made a positive difference.
Okay. Tell us something we don't know about you.
Gosh, I think Wikipedia has just put everything out there. Something that people don't know about me. Goodness.
Seems like we know a lot here.
I was just about to say, I'm trying to think what people don't know. I'm allergic to prawns.
Oh, okay. We'll take note of that.
They'll probably all be trying to feed me prawns now when I go to events.
And my next question, conveniently, is, what is your favourite food?
Well, it used to be prawns. I've only just developed this allergy.
Okay.
So one week, the week before, I was in a restaurant, you know, stuffing myself with these very lumptious prawns. And the next week, unfortunately, I was having a severe allergy attack. So that was my favourite food. What's my favourite food now? Well, as you get older and it's very difficult. I can tell you what I don't like.
Oh.
I do not like Brussels sprouts. I can't stand the smell of it, the taste of it. No.
Oh, okay. So in terms of yourself, what drives you to keep pushing? Because one of your mantra is push.
Absolutely.
What does push mean, and why do you keep pushing?
Well, every door is open. If you push, you persevere until something happens.
Okay.
That has absolutely driven me, continues to drive me, and I hope will become contagious, that it drives other people.
Okay. And closing on the main part of this podcast, in terms of your life, it has obviously propelled into another era and also opening doors for others. How do you maintain normality every day in terms of what you have achieved in British history?
Oh, my mother. 3 calls a day, every day.
Okay. I've got 2 closure questions for you now.
Yep.
So one's from the previous guest, was it Ben Burgaff? He's CEO of Net Zero Wales, an organisation put in place by Welsh Government to push forward in terms of net zero, in terms of meeting climate targets. So his question, more of an open-ended question with a 2 parts. So I was like, you didn't make it easy for us here.
Okay.
So first part is, what would you do differently tomorrow to live a more sustainable life?
I would like to think I live a more sustainable life by, the lots of things that I do and contribute to in a positive way.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of sustainability, I would like to see the inequality gaps, that they are not as wide. They are increasing. I'd like to see them decreasing. Lots of us want to do lots around when we think about sustainability in terms of climate change, but there is a cost to that.
Yes.
And not all of us are in a privileged position to do that. And of course, there are people who are worried in terms of what that may mean financially, whether they can feed themselves, their families, and so forth. So for me, sustainability takes on a broader context. And what that means is if we can have that narrowing of the inequality gap across health, education, housing, and all those things, then we can work towards greater things and towards greater sustainability that's going to ensure that our viability, and we're here for hundreds and hundreds of years to come. Okay,
this conveniently goes as question 2. So what steps would you take next with your friends and family to live a more sustainable life? I think there's a get up and go question.
Get up and go. Well, I'm always going on about to my mother about recycling.
Yes.
And that, she needs to cut down on waste.
Yes.
So it's probably a bigger educational piece for us all around the difference that we can make individually.
Wonderful. So my final closure question is from Adrian Miller. So he's membership director for the Institute of Collaborative Working. His questions can link to contracts and collaboration. So they work with many organisations around the UK, many government departments from the Foreign Office to Commonwealth Office and private bodies. So a big part is about contracting collaborations. The question is, do you have a view on whether collaborative forms of contract could be an effective way to avoid conflict in more large, complex projects or programs? So large projects, you have a lot of different people supporting suppliers, and you can imagine there's a lot of conflicts, a lot of, well, that's not part of my job, but we're all on the same job. So if you imagine HS2, you can imagine how many people are working on that project. Is there any way in terms of making collaboration a form of contract that would work for people?
Well, it should. We should be moving away from a competitive mindset to a more collaborative mindset.
Yeah.
And of course, if we think about the AI capabilities that one can now put all of that information into, and it spits out, different things for us all. But until we have that shift in mindset, that moving away, as I say, from the competitive to the collaborative mindset, then we're always going to have that bit of competition. And there's nothing wrong with competition. But I always work on the premise that collaboration is absolutely key to solving lots of the issues that we come across in our professional lives and our personal lives.
How do we deal with that when you have, for example, several suppliers working together and they have different cultures and mindsets within the organisation? If we tie them to a collaborative contract, will that just fix the problem, forcing them to collaborate?
I think there's a difficulty when you force anyone to do anything. They push against that. So I think, it's a part of a wider discussion. I think if people understand the journey and the reason why, the purpose, if you like. If they understand the purpose, then they're more likely to sign up to that. It's when people don't understand the destination, or they don't understand why, the whys, the whos, and so forth, that you then get that pushback. So that's what it's going to take in my mind.
Okay, wonderful. So this has come to the closure of the Action podcast with yourself. It's been a great pleasure to have you here. The final part of this is you writing up your question for the next guest. So I'll hand this over to you to write up your question for the next guest.
Thank you. You just want me to write it, not tell it?
No, just write it. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Are there any final thoughts you'd like the listeners or viewers to know from yourself?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me, inviting me on to be a guest. I hope much of what we have discussed and said will resonate lots with individuals. And I think it's important that one of my favourite quotes is, in a world where we can be anything, let's be kind. So
On that note, we will end the episode. So thank you for listening, and it has been an absolute privilege and pleasure on my part to have you as a guest today. Thank you.